Well, hello there. This is Mitchell S. Karnes, and welcome to the Mitchell S. Karnes Podcast. Had a lot of people ask me about inspiration. How do I get ideas for the stories? So I just want to share that, and I want to share the process of my writing over the next several weeks. So today, to answer that question, how do I get my ideas? Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I have more ideas than I have time to write. I have file folders full of them. A lot of them are decent ideas, some of them are good ideas, and a few of those are great ideas. The great ideas are the ones that I take hold of and making time for to write. So here is that process. And before I get to that, just if you have any questions, if you'd like to interact with me, go to my website, mitchellscarnesauthor.com, and I will respond with that and talk with you about that. And please sign up for the newsletter. Um, the first published short story that I had, the first piece of fiction I had, uh, was published in 1984 in the Belmont Literary Magazine. It was a short story that I called When Nothing Else Matters. There probably could have been a better title, but that keyed you into the theme. And the inspiration I had to that was I watched a movie with John Ritter in it where he was an out of work actor, and he was promoting a film about a superhero, and he happens to have his costume on when he um, steps in and foils a robbery. And so that goes on. And so with this, I kind of took that idea and went to the whole point of that. And the opening line came from I had been playing basketball that night, just pick up game with a few friends, and and I didn't just dislocate it, but I hyperextended my knee, and so I was in a big wrap on my knee, sitting on there, and I had to have a short story that was due for my creative writing class at Southern Illinois University the next morning. And I spoke this line to my roommate. I said, "Here I am, 20 years old, and my days as a superhero are over." And so that became the thing that just popped in my head. This guy who was trying to be a superhero, his age and what he was doing. And so that evolved into this story where this young man tries his best to, he doesn't have superpowers. And so he tries to get a costume, he gets all that ready, and he works into trying to become this superhero. And so it gets to that point where he can't save the person without a sacrifice. And so his point at the end was to sacrifice himself to let this person go. And so that's when nothing else matters um, came into. And so um, a decade later, having time to finally write. And of course, I was teaching English at the time and grading 87 papers. And so the time I had to write was almost obsolete. But I had uh, an idea. I didn't like the cover of this, and I later on got that back and changed the title and the cover to Scales of Justice, which is now available on Amazon as that version. But this was I was reading a Daredevil comic when Daredevil was angry because Bullseye had killed his girlfriend Elektra, and so he had an opportunity to kill him. And this is that game that he plays, a Russian roulette game. And so the first thing I tried to start doing was write this book in shifts of whose mind they were going to. And so it turns out to be about an assassin who finds out that his parents, who he thought died in an accident, were killed by someone in his own organization. And so that's where crossing the line gets in. It was supposed to be a very, very subtle Christian emphasis at the very, very end, and the publisher put that on as the cover, which to me ruined everything, but that's okay. But that became this idea, and what I tried to write, and I took probably 16 different versions of the first four chapters, threw them away 16 times because it never did come on page like it did in my mind. And I was trying to write it back and forth where he's got this guy, he's put him on a cross, he's playing Russian roulette with him because he wants to die himself, but he wants to get a revenge on the person who killed his parents. And so he points the gun at him, and then you have his flashback, the first part of the story, points the gun at himself, you have his flashback, and so that pieced back, and every flashback was you were brought back to the present with the click of the gun. Never could write it that way, and so I ended up writing it kind of chronologically in the story, and that became my second published piece, and that was my first novel. A few years, actually, the next year, that was 1996. 1997, I submitted to the Williamson County Our Voices a short story, and this was not my idea. This was my brother Mark's. He had a dream about this artist who splattered people's remains on a canvas as his art. And it was kind of a satire on art. So I took that idea, ran with that, um, with a guy who has such great talent, but his art is so good that it looks like a photograph. And so he can't get it published because people, or can't get it sold because people think that if I wanted a photograph, I would have just commissioned a photograph. And so what happens is he's doing an art piece on this fruit bowl. He just so upset with himself. So he takes out a gun. He's going to commit suicide. He can't get himself to do it. So he shoots the bowl of fruit. His agent comes that next morning and sees the splatter of fruit on the canvas and just thinks it's absolutely wonderful. And so that kind of escalates through. That's a family portrait, if that kind of gives you a hint of where that goes. But you can take ideas from anywhere. I rarely take ideas that people give me because they want control of that idea. They want credit for that idea, even though you've written the whole story yourself. But it just gets complicated. That was my brother, and so I went ahead and did that. Later on, in a big gap in 2013, published in the Storyteller magazine. And this was one clearly where they just said they were looking for stories for fantasy stories for kids. And so I rarely write for children or young adults, middle grade fiction. But I just imagine this ring where this magician and he does all these things and it just looks fantasy. It looks wonderful. Things come to life. It's an illusionist sort of thing. But his grandfather dies. He leaves him the ring and with this long story. And so the young man begins to realize that the ring has the power to take whatever comes in your imagination and make that real. That's Grandpa Charlie's ring. Um, and so a story that I wanted to write for a long, long, long time it ends up being these four novels, which I will share with you in just a second. But I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. We had an ongoing campaign for several years. Characters got too powerful. We wanted to get rid of the characters. One person didn't want to do that, and so it came this long tail. And he was very, very angry, threatened to shoot us, kill us, whatever. So I pulled back. We all separated our different ways. It took me a long time to get the distance to write this one. But what I did was I had a trilogy and the imagination of what if they got in the game? What if they became the characters like they always said they wanted to be and got in the game of Dungeons and Dragons? And so this became a story. I pitched the idea and I get what I normally get in my my little niche is that I was too Christian for the secular market, too graphic for the Christian market, and so um, sent it, and then finally this editor or this publisher out of Chattanooga, a press there, said if you made this a young adult fantasy series trilogy, and you um, tone it down a little bit, I would consider publishing that. And so I took the story and I toned it down for young adult. So older middle school, younger high school, and created this world that we had Canaan shade. And if you know anything about the Bible, the land of Canaan was the land of promise, milk and honey. And so Canaan shade ends up being a darkened version of that. What they thought was going to be great isn't. And my mind came up with this tagline for the whole series is getting in the game was a dream of a lifetime. Getting out was the nightmare no one anticipated. So once they get in the story and into their characters and become their characters, they have a hard time getting back out. So the characters personalities start taking over theirs. Well, I pitched the idea to him. He loved it, and he says, "But I need to know, why should I care for these kids, these people?" And so he asked me to make a prequel to that. And so the Pact became the first story. This is those same boys, those same characters in middle school and high school, playing the game, how they come to that. I added things. I used to coach wrestling, I used to wrestle myself. And so wrestling became one of the characters, and that plays in later in the series. But you have these four boys that play this game. Several things happen. One betrays the rest of them, but they make this pact that they will be friends forever, that they will play this game. Obviously, they don't. And so what happens is 20 years later, one of the characters has cancer, or one of the people have cancer, and he wants to play this game with his old friends one more time before he passes away. And so they agree to assemble, and they uh, come in there, and he has this way where they can get into the game and actually become their characters. And so they do this thinking this is going to be one quick, fun game. Dragon's Pawn is about which one of those is the dragon's pawn, which one of those sets up the others for failure. You realize later on who the dragon is. Um, the second book, I had an idea, and this is called The Treasure of Laroque Sewell. And there's a trick to that one, and that is the mystery that you've got to solve, is what is that treasure? Of course, this is one of my favorite covers that David King did, and it was just fantastic. But that's the middle book in that series, and then it resolves in Canaan Shade Resurrection. And so I had that all as a series idea, and I had to decide how to split that into four stories. And so that's just basically, you get ideas from anywhere. You can read the news, you can watch the news, you can listen to what people say, hear for those little taglines. I have a lot of my short stories and ideas that came from dreams, real dreams. So I wake up and it's such a good idea that I jot it down. I used to have to keep a little recording recorder down there so that I could wake up and put it in there before I forget it. I've got myself now where I can remember those dreams and do the details that I want to do. I'm currently writing one, kind of based on family trauma that we went through with drugs and rehab and in jail and all of the situations, and where I, as a pastor, struggled with being a pastor, because one of the things it says is he'll be able to manage his own household, and so I felt inadequate, and so it's part of based on my struggle. So one of my children's struggles, kind of a conglomeration of that, and that's all been fictionalized. And so I'm working on that as a novella right now. I am currently writing the Abbey Rhodes Mystery Series. So all of that came as a wonderful idea. Um, those are current books. Book one, Watergrave, is getting ready to become streaming series. So just take those ideas, whatever comes to you, even if you don't think it's worthy at the time, jot it down. Don't think you're going to remember it, because often what you think you're going to remember, you don't. In the Abbey Road series, I had the character first, Abbey Rhodes, and I started building her backstory. And her backstory ended up being about 60 pages, I think, of what she went through, the trauma that she went through, and everything that got her to the starting point in this series for me. And so what happens is she finally becomes a detective, and the first case is where Abby has to go to the one place where she swore never to return, and that's the church. And so you understand, okay, so there's some backstory with the church. And I pitched that idea for Watergrave, got an agent. The agent pitched the idea, finally got a publisher. And once I got the publisher and got him to accept this book, I asked him to sign me for 6 books, because that's her story arc. That's how much time it takes for her to get through that backstory, to get to where she's reconciling herself with her past, with her truth, and with God. And so um, the whole series is based on own the truth, or the truth will own you. So that kind of came in multiple ideas and multiple visions, and uh, Just go with the ideas that you're given. Write them down. The ones that just keep nagging at you, that's the one that you want to go with. Because if it won't let go of you, chances are your audience won't let go of it. Have fun, correspond with me, ask me questions, anything you want to do. Get on my website and say, hey, I've got this idea about that. Do you think that's worthy? I'll be glad to give you some feedback. I taught creative writing. I had a creative writing group in high school that I was privileged to host. And so I would like to pass on what's been passed on to me. I had lots of great mentors, lots of great advice. Learn, study, read, write all the time. Take those ideas and run with it. Have a blast. Talk to me. I'll be glad to talk to you. Have a good day.